George Russell crossed the line in Canada with a fastest lap so absurd, even rival engineers thought something was wrong with the timing system. Then the FIA started digging deeper. And what they reportedly found after analyzing the Mercedes data has now created massive tension inside the team at the worst possible moment of the season. Because this is no longer just about one unbelievable lap. This is about whether Mercedes accidentally exposed a hidden advantage in front of the entire Formula One paddock. The numbers immediately triggered alarm bells. Russell was gaining time in corners where Mercedes had struggled before. The acceleration looked unnaturally clean. The car stayed perfectly stable under power while rivals were fighting wheel spin and instability. McLaren noticed it instantly. Ferrari started comparing telemetry. Red Bull reportedly demanded more scrutiny behind closed doors. And now the FIA is reportedly examining new evidence connected to how the Mercedes delivered performance during that lap. But here's where the story becomes explosive. The pressure is no longer only external. Inside Mercedes, tension is already reaching dangerous levels between George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Toto Wolff is trying to hold the garage together. And every new FIA question is making the atmosphere even more toxic. Because if Russell's fastest lap really exposed something unusual, this investigation could destroy Mercedes from both sides at the same time. The moment George Russell finished that lap in Canada, the Mercedes garage should have been celebrating. Instead, people inside Formula One started asking questions almost immediately. Because the lap did not only look fast, it looked strange. And in Formula One, strange is dangerous. The timing sectors appeared on the screens and rival engineers instantly noticed something that did not make sense. Russell was finding huge chunks of time in parts of the circuit where Mercedes had not looked dominant earlier in the weekend. That is the detail that changed everything. If a car suddenly becomes faster on the straights, teams usually blame engine power first. But Russell's lap was different. The gains were appearing during acceleration phases, especially coming out of slower corners where traction and energy deployment matter most. And according to growing paddock discussion after Canada, that is exactly where the FIA reportedly started focusing their attention too. Think about driving on a wet road. Most drivers need a second to fully apply the throttle without sliding the rear tires. But imagine one car somehow putting all the power down instantly, smoothly, perfectly, every single time. That car immediately looks suspiciously efficient. That is how Russell's onboard appeared to rival teams. The Mercedes looked calm, stable, almost effortless under acceleration. Meanwhile, other drivers were visibly fighting their cars through the same sections. McLaren engineers reportedly noticed the difference first while reviewing telemetry comparisons after the session. Ferrari started looking deeper into corner exit behavior. Red Bull became especially interested in how smoothly the Mercedes transitioned power onto the straights. Because in modern Formula One, tiny details in power delivery can reveal enormous hidden advantages. And this is where the pressure around Mercedes exploded internally. The FIA was already under growing scrutiny before Canada because rival teams had spent weeks questioning Mercedes' performance gains. So when Russell suddenly produced a lap that looked almost too perfect technically, the entire paddock atmosphere changed within minutes. Not publicly at first. Quietly. Inside engineering rooms. Inside strategy meetings. Over private conversations between team principals. Because Formula One teams study each other obsessively. Every steering input. Every acceleration curve. Every tiny movement of the rear tires. Nothing goes unnoticed. And according to speculation growing around the paddock, the FIA reportedly became interested in new telemetry evidence connected to the consistency of the Mercedes power delivery during Russell's lap. That sounds incredibly technical. But simplify it like this. Imagine two runners leaving a starting line. One struggles slightly finding rhythm before accelerating smoothly. The other reaches maximum speed almost instantly without any wasted movement at all. Eventually people start asking how that second runner is doing it. That is exactly what happened after Canada. And here's where things became uncomfortable for Mercedes themselves. Because this was not happening during a quiet period of the season. The championship pressure is already enormous. Russell is fighting to establish himself as the team's clear leader again. Antonelli is trying to defend his position internally and externally. Toto Wolff is already managing rising tension between both sides of the garage. Now suddenly, the FIA is reportedly looking deeper into the team's most dominant performance. That creates a nightmare environment inside Formula One teams. Because investigations do not only create technical pressure, they create emotional pressure too. Engineers become nervous about every setup change. Drivers become careful during interviews. Management starts worrying about political attacks from rivals. And rivals absolutely exploit moments like this. McLaren see an opportunity. Ferrari see an opportunity. Red Bull especially understand how powerful political pressure can become during championship fights. But here's what makes the situation even more explosive. According to growing discussion inside the paddock, the FIA may not only be examining the Canada lap itself anymore. They may be comparing Russell's telemetry against previous race weekends too. And if those patterns match, Mercedes could suddenly find themselves facing questions far bigger than one insane fastest lap. If the FIA really started comparing George Russell's Canada telemetry against previous races, then Mercedes may already be entering the most dangerous phase of this entire controversy. Because Formula One investigations become far more serious the moment patterns start appearing. One strange lap can be explained away. A repeated pattern across multiple race weekends is much harder to dismiss. And according to growing paddock speculation after Canada, that is exactly what rival teams are now searching for. Patterns in acceleration. Patterns in energy deployment. Patterns in how the Mercedes behaves under throttle application compared to the rest of the grid. That changes everything. Because Formula One engineers do not analyze cars the way normal fans watch races. They break performance into microscopic details. Tiny gains hidden inside corner exits. Rear stability under power. How smoothly energy systems transition from recovery to deployment. These details are like fingerprints. Every car leaves them behind. And once rival teams believe they recognize an unusual fingerprint, the political pressure becomes relentless. Think about a student suddenly getting perfect scores on every difficult exam after months of average results. At first, people are impressed. But if the exact same strange patterns appear repeatedly, eventually teachers start reviewing older tests too. That is exactly what may now be happening around Mercedes. And here's why this creates massive tension inside the garage itself. Because the moment old race data becomes part of the discussion, nobody inside the team feels safe anymore. Every engineer starts wondering which systems the FIA is focusing on. Every department becomes more cautious internally. Every dominant lap from earlier in the season suddenly returns under scrutiny. And perhaps most dangerously of all, George Russell now carries the pressure personally. Because Russell is becoming the public face of the controversy. Every onboard clip gets analyzed online. Every acceleration zone becomes a debate. Every interview answer gets dissected by fans, journalists, and rival teams searching for clues. That pressure builds incredibly fast in Formula One, especially during a championship fight. And this is where the situation with Kimi Antonelli becomes extremely sensitive. Because internal rivalries become toxic very quickly when outside investigations appear. Antonelli is already under pressure after losing momentum against Russell. The Canadian weekend strengthened Russell's position psychologically inside Mercedes. Engineers see him delivering under pressure. Management sees him controlling critical moments better. Now add FIA scrutiny on top of that environment. Suddenly, every internal decision becomes politically dangerous. Who receives the latest setup updates first? Whose technical direction does the team trust more? Which driver becomes the public spokesperson during media pressure? These questions already create tension during title battles. An FIA investigation multiplies that tension dramatically. And Toto Wolff knows exactly how destructive situations like this can become. Mercedes have lived through internal wars before. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg nearly fractured the team while winning championships. The atmosphere became so intense that even victories sometimes felt uncomfortable inside the garage. Now Wolff may be watching another dangerous situation begin to form. Because Russell looks increasingly confident. Antonelli looks increasingly emotional. And meanwhile, rival teams are actively trying to destabilize Mercedes politically from the outside. That combination can become explosive, especially if the FIA continues requesting deeper technical analysis. And here's the truly terrifying possibility now spreading through the paddock. What if the FIA does not find an illegal system, but instead discovers a completely legal interpretation that Mercedes understood before everyone else? That possibility may actually frighten rival teams even more. Because if Mercedes found a legal solution hidden inside the regulations, then Canada was not the moment they got exposed. It was the moment the rest of Formula One realized they might already be too late to stop them. The possibility that Mercedes may have found a fully legal advantage is exactly why tension inside Formula One is now reaching another level entirely. Because if the FIA investigates everything, reviews all the telemetry, compares multiple race weekends, and still finds the system technically legal, then the rest of the grid faces a terrifying reality. Mercedes may simply be smarter right now. And Formula One teams hate nothing more than realizing a rival understood the rules better before anyone else did. That possibility is what makes the atmosphere around George Russell so dangerous at this moment. Because now, every extraordinary performance he delivers becomes emotionally loaded from every direction. If he dominates, rivals question the legality. If he struggles, critics immediately say FIA scrutiny changed Mercedes' behavior. There is no comfortable position left for him anymore. And you can already feel the psychological pressure building around the team. Think about what Mercedes are dealing with simultaneously. An FIA investigation growing louder. Rival teams increasing political attacks. An internal battle between Russell and Antonelli. A championship fight tightening every weekend. That combination can crush even elite teams mentally. And Formula One history proves it repeatedly. Sometimes the fastest car does not lose because performance disappears. It loses because pressure destroys stability from the inside. That is the danger Mercedes now face. Because internally, the atmosphere may already be becoming fragile. George Russell suddenly looks like the stronger driver psychologically. Canada gave him momentum. His confidence is rising. He handled the pressure, delivered the lap, controlled the narrative on track. Antonelli, meanwhile, is entering a dangerous emotional phase. The young Italian is still incredibly fast, but pressure changes young drivers differently. Every mistake feels heavier. Every comparison with Russell becomes more personal. And now, with the FIA controversy surrounding the team, Antonelli may start feeling isolated inside the garage if results continue moving toward Russell's side. That is where teammate rivalries become poisonous. Not through one dramatic argument. Through small shifts in trust. Engineers naturally move toward the calmer side of the garage during chaos. Strategists begin relying more heavily on the driver delivering consistency under pressure. Team leadership starts prioritizing emotional control as much as raw pace. And right now, Russell appears to have that advantage. But here's where the story becomes even more dangerous for Mercedes long term. The FIA investigation may continue hanging over every future race weekend for months. That changes how the team operates completely. Every setup adjustment becomes sensitive. Every software update gets reviewed more carefully. Every dominant sector time risks triggering another wave of suspicion online and inside the paddock. And rival teams will not let the pressure disappear quietly. Red Bull know how to weaponize controversy. Ferrari understand how political narratives influence Formula One. McLaren, fighting directly against Mercedes in the standings, have every reason to keep demanding scrutiny for as long as possible. Because even if Mercedes are eventually cleared completely, the distraction itself already creates competitive damage. And in Formula One, distraction is deadly. Especially during title fights decided by tiny margins. One strategy mistake. One unstable weekend. One emotional driver conflict. That is all it takes for momentum to collapse. And perhaps the biggest problem of all for Mercedes is this. The Canada fastest lap may have changed how the entire paddock sees them now. Before Canada, rival teams feared Mercedes' performance. After Canada, they may fear Mercedes' innovation. That is a completely different kind of threat. Because speed can sometimes be matched. A hidden technical understanding inside the regulations is much harder to catch. And if the FIA's deeper analysis eventually confirms Mercedes found a legal interpretation nobody else fully understood, then the entire grid may suddenly realize something terrifying. Canada was not the weekend Mercedes got caught. It may have been the weekend Mercedes revealed they are already ahead of Formula One again.